On today's question of faith, is talking with Jesus a violation of stranger danger for kids? Everybody, welcome to Question of Faith. I am mhayes. I'm the Director of Young Adult Ministry here in the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian, the Vicar for Evangelization.
And I'm Brooke Uehlein, Communications Manager for the Diocese.
Brooke is back. Hey, happy anniversary, Brooke.
Thank you.
Was it 5 years?
5 years.
Working here.
Yeah, working here this week, this time frame.
Yeah. While we're recording. Yeah.
Yes.
Probably passing us as we speak. Right.
And
you all can't see it, but Brooke is wearing a top that has lemons on it, and she just told us before we started the show that lemons are in this year, both in your home and in your wardrobe.
In your wardrobe, yes.
I'm going out and buying a lemon shirt right after this podcast.
I have a lemon in my suit pocket here. No, I'm just kidding. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, the spirit is like everybody wants to be outside and traveling. And so,
freshness.
Right.
Beach wear,
Zest.
cruise wear, Bahama wear, that's the vibe you want to give.
Got it.
Zest. That's
Zest.
Right. Yeah.
Lemon zest. There's a drink where you take a piece of the peel or something, and it's a zest. I
don't know. These are all trends that we just don't know, right, Father?
It's true.
You're welcome.
It's true.
I remember when I was when I first went to Busted Halo, the Knicks were really big at that point, and all the celebrities were going to Knick games. And I said to my wife, I can't go to Knick games anymore. And she said, why? I said, because going to Knick games are trendy, and I'm not trendy. And she said, oh, honey, don't worry. No one thought you were trendy before. 20 years, still going.
I don't think that.
And then anyway, we were talking about, this is a question that came from our Grandparent Workshop, is talking with Jesus a violation for stranger danger with kids? So if we want our children to have a relationship with Jesus, but we also tell our children not to talk to strangers, what's up with that? What's up with that? What's up with that?
That's a great. See, Mike and I, before the show, we're talking about sound bites that we have to have that we could plug in. We want to do that SNL one. That'll be one of them.
That's one of them for sure. Yeah.
Brooke, you have some. You brought a journal.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah.
I know you were doing your homework yesterday when I stopped up.
I was because, when you asked if I would join, I'm like, this is my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Like, I just always, for our own family and for our circle of friends, and then even anyone who, we encounter, we're always trying to say, like, look, this isn't brain science or surgery or whatever the word is, like, right? Anyone can do this. And that it's just like anything. The more you're comfortable with your friendships and the more that it surrounds you, it doesn't become stranger or danger. It's just a part of your everyday living. And I think a lot of it too, having Jesus in our heart and in our lives, is just about what you're doing every day and then what you do in the big moments of the year, the things that impact your kids, right? Your kids always remember Christmas, birthdays, Easter, those huge celebrations. Like, even recall your own memory right now.
Right.
Like, I can remember my first communion, my confirmation. So as parents or grandparents, friends, neighbors, you're constantly, I hope, thinking about how your child is going to reflect on that, and it carries with them. So I don't know if that kind of helps kick us off. But
I think one of the issues that maybe the grandparents are coming up with was my grandchild doesn't know Jesus. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who's trying to introduce them to Jesus because their parents have not. Yeah. So how do I do that without it being like, Jesus? Who's this Jesus guy? Right. He's a stranger. I don't talk to strangers.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think too, just to take it a step further, I have no idea if my sister is listening to this or not, but she shared during Lent or Advent, I can't really remember this year, because of the pandemic. So my nephew would have been, I think, 2 or 3 when the pandemic started, and then you didn't go to church, and they moved during that time.
Oh, even worse, yeah.
Long story short, he did not recognize the crucifix the first time they went back to Mass.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, what are you talking about? That's Jesus, She was mortified and shocked. But the whole point was like, wow, you didn't realize, for her, it was like baby Jesus, we talked about Christmas,
Right.
we did all these things. But by the time her family actually entered back into Mass, it was kind of like surprising to him. So grandparents or, Catholics who practice, I think sometimes can come across this. But I would say, to answer the direct question, would be like even small steps help, A good friend that we mutually share, Desi and Matt Gould, they shared with me years ago that they save all their Christmas cards. And so at that time, again, the kids would have been 2, 3 years old. And from after Christmas, that whole year, they take one card out at dinner time or bedtime, and the kids pick the card out randomly. And then that is the family that they say a special intention for at
sweet?
mealtime or Mass time. She got this idea, sorry, Des, from this book called The Catholic All Year Compendium?
Compendium, yeah.
Liturgical Living for Real Life by Kendra Tierney. I highly recommend this book. I've flagged multiple pages. So I started in a small step. Ryan and I started with a small step of doing this Christmas card. And it really helped Jordan learn, our daughter, we want to model Christ, and prayer is a big part of your life. And the more you do those things and maybe incorporate images of Jesus, holy water, different blessings into just the Christmas card prayer, then you're like, okay, we can do something else. And then you're celebrating like saints' feast days. Her name's Jordan. So we go with when Jesus was baptized.
Baptism of the Lord. Yeah, that's cool.
My middle name's Elizabeth. I'm not so certain I was named after a specific Elizabeth, but we go with Elizabeth Ann Seton because she goes to Catholic school, and that keeps us, again, like keeping that ball rolling of that relationship, and that, saints were friends of Jesus or modeled Christ-like behavior. They became saints for a reason. I don't know if I'm making sense or connecting the
you are.
dots.
Very good sense, yeah.
But the point of this book, the Catholic All Year Compendium, gives you these little examples. And it's not even always like sugar-coated. One of the ideas that we've incorporated is Spy Wednesday. So when Judas betrayed Jesus. And I think that even models, what Jesus's relationship was like with Judas on both ends of the spectrum, right? How Judas was to Jesus, but that's a very good teaching moment for a young child, and to get it really down to their level.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of what you're doing is tapping into the liturgical year, which is a great blessing that we Catholics have, whether it's feast days or the penitential seasons of Lent and Advent.
Spy Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. All of
Okay.
Holy Week and all that
Yeah.
that helps us better understand the faith. When I was up in Brooke's office yesterday, and because I didn't know what the question was until I popped in there, but I thought this is actually a very important theological question because it asks the question who God is and then who Jesus is. And Jesus, of course, is both true God and true man, both at the same time, not diminishing either his divinity or humanity. And if God is the one who created us and we're made in his image and likeness, that he can't be a stranger. By the very fact that we are his creation and he's our creator, then he's our friend. And when he takes on our flesh, he takes on everything that we human beings experience except sin itself, although he doesn't sin, but he takes on the sins of the world to save us from sin. So more than anything, he's our friend. And a lot of it seems like what parents, their job and grandparents to do is introduce people to Jesus as friend and Savior. And what does a friend do? A friend lays down his life. No one has greater love than this, than to lay down your life for your friends. And so that's what Jesus does for us on the cross. But it's funny, was it your nephew who got to know him, the incarnation in the cradle, but then had to be reintroduced to him on the cross? Because that's a really important insight too. That should be a jarring image, the crucifixion. That's very strange that we have a man who's being killed, imaged in the center of most of our Catholic churches and the sanctuaries, right? So, yeah, catechesis, evangelization is the answer to this question.
Absolutely, yeah. Introduce people to Jesus, right? You know, it probably doesn't just go for our kids and our, our grandkids, but what about some of our friends? What about the people who don't get to know Jesus, who have made Jesus into a stranger, maybe?
Right.
How do we do that for them? It's the same kind of thing.
And sin estranges us from God, pulls us apart from our relationship with God. But Jesus says, I no longer call you slaves but friends. And we're not intended to be strangers to God, but friends with God. He desires friendship with us.
Yeah. And I think too, friendship is fun. And so for children, something's going to work different for everyone, but find that thing that connects with them, that creates that happy moment, and then just keep building off of that.
Yeah.
I always say, we are not Irish, so St. Patrick's Day was not a thing for us. But then when I got to high school, it was very apparent there was a huge, Irish Catholic culture at Elyria Catholic, and my mom was like, oh, yeah, go, embrace that, have fun, do all the things with the friends on St. Patrick's Day, go to this mass, travel downtown, because she realized, that was the next evolution in her parenting, I guess, to us as teens.
Yeah,
so.
Realize why you're celebrating, right? It's the kind of thing. We have all these celebrations for saint days. I could remember as a kid going through the streets with the statue of Our Lady of Mount Carmel and these big, huge processions, and afterwards there was this huge party afterwards. And as you said, Brooke, it was fun, right?
Yeah.
We had just a load of good times just doing that.
It's neat how in Catholicism and in reality that grace builds on or grace completes nature. So the way that you're going to come to know the truth about God and who he is by way of analogy in terms of friendship. So if you can understand what it means to have friends in school or here at work, then you could say, oh, well, that's what friendship's like. And God wants to have the perfect friendship with me and will never abandon me and will always be there. So it's similar to the relationship with parents and children. If you understand what it means to have a good father or a good mother, it's easier to understand God's fatherhood or Mary's motherhood. And the reverse is true too. If we've had relationships where we've been hurt in friendships, then we can see God not as one who wants to befriend us, but maybe one who wants to compete with us and steal our joy or our freedom. And that's not true. So a lot of times the healing needs to take place through grace, but on human level. And then that healing can also help us with our relationship with God, the persons of the Trinity, Mary and the saints, all those sorts of things. But those two are related. There's definitely a relationship there that needs to be acknowledged,
Yeah.
My friend Margaret used to say all the time, if you had a friend and you got together with them once a week, and all you did was do the same exact thing every single time you got together and never did anything else, what kind of relationship would that be like? And we're all just sort of thought about it and said, that would be a lousy relationship. And how many people's relationship with Christ is like that? Where they go to Mass, they punch their time card, and they leave, and that's it. They don't ever get any deeper than that. And and it kind of challenged a bunch of my friend group at the time, saying, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe we need to deepen this a little bit. For me, I think too, the colloquy part of the examen has been very helpful. It's where you imagine that you have a one-on-one conversation with Jesus, and then you sit back and you imagine what he would say in response. And for me, that's kind of opened up a relationship more than it would if I just sat back and did nothing, or if I just went to Mass and only experienced Christ in that way. It's been really fruitful for me to kind of think back, if this is a relationship, God wants what's best for me. And so he's going to give me advice in this moment. He's going to push me in the way that I want to be pushed, in the way that I need to be pushed, more importantly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of your analogy as well as you just said it about Mass, and it's easy to fall into the autopilot trap of just punching your ticket. But if you think about Mass as a date or something like this, or you get together with your best friend once a week and you go to dinner and you share your word. So at Mass, God is sharing his word. His word is living and effective, and then he's giving himself to us in the Eucharist, and we're receiving that, and that is a renewal. But also the build up to that and what pours out of that. So it's not that just that you think about that for that 1 hour. Your week is building up to that and flowing out of that moment. Yeah. So it's relational. I mean, we get to this all the time on the show, whether it's inviting people to things in the church, how important the relationship is, and it's not just punching the ticket. It's not just transactional, but relational.
Right. And I think, too, while you were speaking, Mike gave me another idea. We did this during Advent this year. For grandparents or parents out there, look at your missal when you go to the pew and look at the front. Usually there's some type of artwork on there. And ask your child, what do you see in this picture? That's Lectio Divina, is that right? Lectio. When you look at the Visio Divina.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
No, that's right.
Because that's a practice I think that a lot of adults do during their study, but that's always there. Your missal's always there, and each week they might notice something different. We also subscribe to. There's a subscription service called the Magnificat for Kids.
Magnifikids.
Thank you. Yeah. And it comes every month in a monthly packet, and it's a kid-based guide to Mass. And there's always a picture and a quiz and a maze and, all kinds of stuff. And Jordan is like sort of almost on the bubble of that. Like she's growing out of it now that she understands the Mass more. But during there was a picture of the Visitation, Elizabeth and Mary. And I believe the picture is, I don't know who had the baby, if it was Mary or the picture was of a child in womb, but you could see the baby. If that makes sense.
I got it. Yeah.
And Jordan was like, after Mass, like, what is this? Like, her mind was blown. She was a little nervous, a little scared, but she was like, what is that? And we had to talk about it, but it's a good thing. And you have to not be so scared as a parent or grandparent to just work your way out of that bubble of like, okay, we're going to have this conversation right now. We're going to do this because that's part of friendship. You have you have tough conversations, you grow from it, and you're better moving forward. Yeah. So.
Be curious about what your kid's curious about, right?
Yeah.
They bring you this question and say, "Oh, they're being curious about this. Good. Let me engage that now and find out what else they're curious about in this moment."
I'm thinking of your home parish too, Holy Trinity. You've got beautiful stained glass windows there and some nice statues around. And even when you walk out of the sacristy, because I was covering Mass 2 weeks ago, there's a statue of a little altar boy with an incense thing, and I always tap the little thurible and it goes back and forth. But there's fascinating things for children to be in a church and say, wow, what's this, Mom? What's this, Dad? And what does all this mean? And that's fun because it stimulates the imagination. I mean, Catholics are very sensual people, and I mean that in the broadest philosophical, anthropological sense. Our liturgies hit the senses. We smell the incense. We see the candles. We hear the music. There's color in the liturgical calendar. So all those things help us befriend Jesus and not make him so like he's still strange in the best sense of the word. Like, oh my gosh, he's God and he's also a human being. But he's our friend. And I think it's living, we've talked about this too, it's living in the context of that mystery. There's something that we're not going to be able to calculate mathematically or scientifically, and it doesn't mean that we're against math or science. We're not. But this element of faith broadens our ability to know the world and the reality and the truth of the world. And that's a lot of fun for kids. Like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, for anyone listening, like if you need to make a baby step, I think just you have to put something forward and see kind of what grasps. And traditions, like I said, are a great way of doing that. There is, I'm not sure if you two would know, but there's a spinoff of Frozen, Olaf's Holiday Adventure or something like that, where Elsa and Anna realize they don't have a Christmas tradition because, they don't have any parents and their sisterhood was messed up. So Olaf goes out to try to find them like a Christmas tradition, and someone introduces the Christmas tree to him, and he goes, wait a minute, you cut down a tree and dress its corpse in lights? Like, right? Hysterical. And it's like, if you dumb it down like that, you're like, yeah, I guess we do. But Jordan would never, right? It's this glorious Christmas tree, or any child would say that, Right. But that doesn't mean you can't apply that to your relationship with
Sure.
the
Right.
church or prayer or Jesus. You have to build on that.
Yeah. So it sounds like what we're saying is don't make Jesus a stranger and he won't be one.
Yeah.
It's not like, that John Mulaney bit, it's you're never talk to an adult that you don't know. And you're usually taught that by an adult that you don't know, in some kind of school assembly or something. Right. And the church is not all that different, right? We're taught to find a person in Jesus, and we're taught to that, by someone who could be a stranger if we don't introduce them to our clergy, if we don't introduce them to the parish staff, if we don't introduce them to all the traditions that we have in the church, all those things, kids don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. And lest our colleague Miguel Chavez chastise us, we should say this too, that if we are friends with Jesus and he's our friend, one of the best things to do is introduce people to your friend.
Yeah.
So for parents or grandparents in this situation, let me tell you about who this Jesus is and who he is in my life and how I talk to him and what my relationship is like with him and why I love him so much and why he loves me. That's the personal witness and testimony, and that's evangelization at the end of the day.
Yeah. I have one more story after you said
Go
that.
for it.
Clicked
Go
with me.
for it.
Sorry.
You got that lemon blouse on.
I got the
So
zest in me.
zesty. Go for it.
This is pre-pandemic. I went on a girls' trip, and I have a sweet, sweet friend who, a couple times during the trip, like she forgot to pack the wallet in her purse or she tripped on the sidewalk, and she would take the Lord's name in vain, and she would immediately turn around to me and a couple other ladies and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." To the point that I was like, ask for forgiveness, and so we started talking about what that means to ask for forgiveness and reconcile, to God. And then by the end of the trip, she was saying, instead of taking the Lord's name in vain, if something clumsy or forgetful would happen, she would say, "Dear Jesus, help me. Dear Jesus,
that's great.
guide me." And I don't know if everyone realizes, that's part of evangelizing.
Sure it
That's
is.
part of evangelization.
Yeah.
It's just these little small steps. Christmas cards, changing the way you think or say things when you get frustrated,
Yeah, making people aware of what they're, what they're doing and what they're experiencing too, and then, that's a good way to sort of change the way things go. And we do a lot of this in a church, and so we're going to go to Our Lady of Grace this week in Hinckley, Ohio. Have you been there before?
It's been a while, but my classmate, Father Bill Smith, is the pastor, and he is 20 years older than me and was formerly a nurse anesthetist. And
Wow.
yeah, no kidding, right?
I did not know that.
I'll knock you out. That's a Father Dan Schlegel joke. And so he was the head of the chaplains, which makes sense because he's part of the medical field for so long. And I don't know how long he's been pastor, maybe 3 or 4 years. It's a fairly modern church.
Yes.
I think it's on Ridge Road or State Road. It's in Hinckley.
Ridge
Road.
believe,
Okay.
Yeah.
And they have a beautiful pavilion out back too. And I don't know. It's a small parish, but that community is building up around there. But then the city's owners don't want it to build up too much because they like the country Hinckley feel. So, but I can't say much because I haven't been. I was in there maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
I've only been in there once. I was just there recently. One of our new deacons celebrated his first mass there.
Oh, okay.
Deacon Scott. So we went out, and it was the first time I was there. You're right. It is sort of like an expansive area that's around there, and they have like a little grotto like all the way in the back that I think they just recently built out there as well. Same kind of experience that you had. I think it was a really lovely kind of close knit community. You could tell that Deacon Scott was really close with the people who'd been praying with them for the 5 years that he's been studying. So he was very touched to be able to celebrate his first mass there.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It feels cozy.
Cozy, yeah. That's a good way to put it, yeah. And then our gospel this weekend is so that they may be one. Jesus' words to the Father. that all may be one. We forget that that's always Jesus' prayer in the Gospel of John, that we might all be one.
Yeah, and the first reading, speaking of deacons, is the stoning of Stephen.
Correct, yes.
Which reminds me of Bob Dylan's famous song, what people thought it was about smoking marijuana, everyone must get stoned. It's actually about stoning, being persecuted. Everyone must be persecuted. Everybody must get stoned. The persecution, and then and Jesus' prayer that they all may be one. So, you have division, and then you have unity.
Yeah.
And sin divides, grace gathers.
And we all introduce people to Jesus when grace gathers once again, especially in moments when sin divides. And so that's another question of faith this week. If you have a question, you could send that to me, mhayes at dioceseofcleveland.org. It would really help, especially if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, if you rate and review this podcast. It helps other people get to know who we are through you. You could introduce people to us, just as you introduce people to Jesus. That would be great. And you know how to do that. Just go on Apple Podcasts, and you could find rate and review on there, or the same with Spotify, and that would be very helpful. And so, Brooke, thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and this has been Question of Faith. We'll have another one next week.